Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing, favorite season. Sleigh bells ringing, diamonds blinging, carols singing, favorite season. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks in my sack or in my bag, yeah. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks in my sack or in my bag, yeah. Frozen, neck is frozen, catch me rolling.
And as good as Mac Jones has been, do you think this puts a little bit of the damper on, hey, Mac Jones is awesome, he's the next Tom Brady? I mean, they won the game with him completing 2 passes. It's the team around the Patriots, right? It's not Mac Jones.
I think it is the team. I think the team is very important, but one thing I did want to acknowledge, and I think you might touch on this, is the weather was terrible. The wind was horrible, and there's a little precipitation as well. And I don't think Josh Allen was much better, so that's what we can use as our baseline. But 2 passes, that's kind of, even in the worst storms that we've seen in like Lambeau or somewhere, you got to complete a little bit more than 2. 2 seems a crazy low to me.
Well, and I think it was more just the way the running game was, right? With Stevenson and Harris before he got banged up. They almost didn't need to throw the football. And that's a lot of credit to Josh McDaniels and Bill Belichick. I mean, we all thought the Patriots would be left for dead. They weren't great with Cam Newton last year, and they still won 7 games, but they weren't very good. We thought this was a transitionary period for the Patriots, but they turned it around. I mean, they're the first number 1 seed in the AFC. Right now, the odds have the Patriots as the most likely team in the AFC to go to the Super Bowl. Their most likely opponent right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but what a story and excitement that would be.
Yeah, that would be something. And I would like to acknowledge, I did watch, I think it was Harris, broke an early long touchdown at the beginning of the game. I think that kind of was the statement piece for the running attack that the Patriots had built for this game. But I believe it was like a 70-yarder or something crazy like that.
Yeah, I think it was about a 65-yarder. And I think one of the things that's so insightful to how smart and different that Josh McDaniels, who's the offensive coordinator in New England, is he is so good at just keeping things simple. You know, he's like, look, it's a windy day. It's cold. Mac Jones is from California, played at Alabama, may not be his best environment to play in the game. You know, it's going to be tough to complete passes, even when, you know, you've got the wind to your back. So we're just going to run the ball. They had 6 offensive linemen in more than 50% of their snaps. You know, they had 6 offensive linemen. They had N'Keal Harry, who's a blocking wide receiver. They had a tight end, whether it was Jonnu Smith or Hunter Henry, in the game at all times. Their great fullback was in the game. They just pounded the ball down Buffalo's throat, controlled the line of scrimmage, controlled the tempo of the game. Defense was good as always. I mean, this Patriots team is about as complete as there is in the NFL right now.
Yeah, and that's the scary part, is that it's been pretty complete and played pretty well very early on. I think from the beginning of the season, really, we've been talking about this Mac Jones-led Patriots team, and they've been pretty solid. And I think the best thing we as fans can do is talk the Patriots up as much as possible, so the only thing they can do is fail. There's no expectation other than Super Bowl, so let's put all the expectations on them now.
As much as we say that, I mean, they've been that way for 2 decades. At a certain point, like, you know, we've gotten to the point where the expectations kind of dipped, and they still exceed them, right? With Brady, it was Super Bowl or bust, and then they start with Mac Jones. Hey, it's a rebuilding year. And they're still good. It's almost frustrating how good the Patriots are all the time.
Yes, it is. And, you know, what more can you do? Bill Belichick's a great coach. They had the greatest quarterback at all time at one point in time. Now they have the greatest coach of all time still. So, you know, we just got to wait for Bill to retire, and hopefully Steve isn't quite as good as Mac was. But, you know, who knows? Yeah. Would you like to move on to our next topic that I'm not so fond of moving on to, but I guess we have to?
I wanted to try and bear you a little of the punishment there with the Ravens losing a heartbreaker at Pittsburgh 20-19 on a failed 2-point conversion late in the game. And, I was just thinking about this, and I took a little time. I was trying to figure out why Harbaugh went for 2 there. And I was just looking back at Baltimore's season a little bit. And I was thinking back, they had the miracle comeback on Monday Night Football against Indianapolis, right? They had a 0% chance to win that game. They came back and won it. They had the miracle kick by Justin Tucker against Detroit. And before that, they had like a 4th and 20 or something, right? So that was a miracle game. They had Kansas City was up 2 scores against Baltimore with the ball. Mahomes throws a terrible interception. Baltimore comes back. Kansas City's about to drive. They're in field goal range. They fumble. Baltimore wins that game. And you keep going through the season, and I'm sure Harbaugh is looking at it, and he's like, we're kind of playing with house money. We're 8-3. We've had so many injuries on defense and on offensive line and running back, frankly, everywhere, that, maybe we're playing a little bit of house money here. And it kind of makes me think there's 2 kinds of gamblers, right? There's the gambler who bets $200 at the table, and if he wins it back, he puts the $200 in his pocket and plays with the winnings the rest of the day. Then there's the kind of gambler that, he doesn't care if he loses everything. He's going to go all in and be super aggressive, hyper aggressive all of the time. And I think Harbaugh is kind of feeling the way the season's going that, I don't want to say it's not a lost season by any means for Baltimore, but it's such a weird season because with all the injuries. So he's kind of like, look, let's just roll the dice and just heck with it. Let's see where this goes. Because he's probably looking at it and being honest with himself that at least 3 of their wins were basically, I don't want to say miracle wins, but pretty close. So it's like, heck, let's just ride the wave. We've got a hot hand. Now, not my kind of gambler, but I think it really showed the kind of gambler that Harbaugh is.
Yeah, I definitely know he loves to gamble in the game. I definitely know that we're big on stats. Obviously, as a fan of the game, I always want to see everybody go for 2, but it's always the wrong decision if you don't make it in my mind. So, it's kind of like double-edged sword. I want them to go for 2. They had the right play call, just poor execution. I think they should have known that they were going to give them a lot of pressure, but they didn't adjust for that, and Lamar got put off balance and had an errant throw that, frankly, if it was a little better throw, Andrews was wide open. So they could have easily scored that too. But I think you brought up a point yesterday in that when you're the better team, you definitely go for 1. And after they miss it, I kind of, that makes sense now.
Well, and the way I think about it is if you're the better team, like if you have Lamar Jackson, you want Lamar Jackson to have in overtime, right? 3 plays, 4 plays, 6 plays, 8 plays with the ball in his hands, right? You don't want him to have 1 play because you saw what happens. 1 play, little off, little pressure, off balance pass, it's incomplete, even though it was a great play. And in overtime, if that happens, it's 2nd and 10. You have more shots at it. Now, part of Harbaugh's thought process was I'm sure look, with the injuries in the secondary, Roethlisberger's playing well. If we lose the coin flip, it's a coin flip. If we lose the coin flip, Pittsburgh's going to win. If we win it, we're going to win. So instead of just waiting for the coin flip, let's just do it right now. I don't really like that as much here. I understand his gambling spirit a little bit there, but I kind of look, trust your defense. You still got Bowser. You still got Queen. You still got some good players. You still got good special teams. The Pittsburgh Steelers aren't world beaters offensively by any means. So I kind of like going for 1 there, but the way their season's gone, I kind of understand why going for 2 because, you are playing a little bit with house money at this point.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to say is that Patrick Queen has been playing incredibly better when he was moved to that will position, which I think he traditionally played in college. He wasn't doing so hot in the Mike position, but now that he's been transitioned to the will, he's played so much better. So I like his growth at that position. But like you said, I think you trust the defense because Pittsburgh wasn't really doing too much offensively in that game. Baltimore showed that they could score, and then when in the clutch time, they could go down and score again at will. I think you hope that you get the ball because you just made another crazy drive and that you can score, and that you trust your defense. You're probably right. You trust your defense that's been playing good that whole game. But a loss is a loss. I don't think this knocks Baltimore out of the playoffs. I'm not expecting a whole lot other than a Super Bowl from them this year. But if they don't make it, I do understand. It's kind of this whole season's gravy to me. I didn't expect much at the beginning, and it's going much better than I expected. But now next season though, when the whole team's back, if they don't steamroll the opposition, there's gonna be hell to pay for me.
I don't know if Baltimore's capable of steamrolling anybody the way this year. I think every game's been one score, right? I guess
Yeah, we go to overtime every game.
Maybe that's why I went for 2, just to avoid overtime. Speaking for a guy stepping up, though, as he always tends to do, how about Gardner Minshew? Right, this was
What a
quarterback.
stud.
What an absolute stud. Minshew Mania, alive and well. Not in Jacksonville this time, but in the city of brotherly love. Jalen Hurts was hurt. He missed the game against the New York Jets this weekend. Gardner Minshew comes in, steps in, has an unbelievable game. At one point late in the first half, early in the second half, he actually had a perfect passer rating. This is a guy who was 6th-round draft pick out of Washington State. He's got the crazy hair. He's got the Fu Manchu. Does not look like an NFL guy at all. Compare him with a guy like Tom Brady, right? But all he does is go out there and have a lot of success, and he is fun as heck to watch.
Well, Nick, I'd like to point something out. You say the Fu Manchu, it's really like a handlebar mustache, okay? I remember another quarterback that had a handlebar mustache, and when you put him at the helm of a certain offense, it propelled them to win a Super Bowl. This is the Joe Flacco handlebar mustache combo, playoff handlebar mustache that always came out every year, and it really is what propelled them to victory. So I think if a team like the Eagles or next year, any team that picks up Gardner, if they let this handlebar-wearing mustache, jort-wearing, cut-off sleeve, just old-school kind of guy come in and handle the team, he looks really, really good.
Well, he does look really good. And I think one of the things for the future is, how is Gardner Minshew not considered a potential viable starting quarterback for a lot of teams? And I think we pulled up some numbers, Mize, if you want to flip over to the numbers we got. And I just, we sat down and we went through Minshew and compared him to a bunch of other starting quarterbacks in the NFL. I went through Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, and Tua Tagovailoa. Those are 3 starters. Those are kind of his peer group, that kind of young quarterback thing. And if you look at the numbers, right, I compared yards per attempt, right? That's kind of an efficiency. You're not just throwing checkdowns. You're not just throwing bombs down the field. Do you have a good solid yards per passing attempt? He's right there with those guys. I think the only guy with more is Jared Goff. And Jared Goff owes a lot of that to his time with McVay in LA. Look at, TD to interception ratio. That's how effective are you taking care of the football versus how many big plays, how many touchdowns do you get in the red zone kind of deal. And he's blowing the other 3 guys out of the water. And then when you look at passer rating, he's right there. It's close, but he's number 1 in that list. And the thing there is, everyone looks at Carson Wentz and they say, oh yeah, franchise quarterback. Both the Eagles and the Colts thought he was a franchise guy. They look at Goff and say, hey, this is a guy that took us to a Super Bowl. He started a lot of games in this league. He's going to keep starting a lot of games. And Tua is the future of the Miami Dolphins. He's going to be starting, if he can be healthy, a lot of games for Miami in the future. I think Gardner Minshew is going to get some attention in the offseason. The more I look at him, just how he plays, the energy he brings, and his numbers are pretty good.
I hate it, but I think a landing zone for Gardner Minshew is Cleveland. They got to go out with the old, in with the new. They thought they had a guy that could act, maybe have some swagger, and they didn't. He was a pretender. But someone who does have swagger, who can really rock out on that team, would be Gardner Minshew. Imagine if you had him with the top-tier talent on every side of the ball that Cleveland has. He would absolutely be on fire.
Yeah, I think that's a great fit. I think, honestly, one of the first fits that jumped into my mind was a team like Houston.
Oh, yeah.
That they just need a culture change, right? They need a complete flip. Right, with all this, how bad they are and the issues with Deshaun Watson, and Gardner Minshew could be that guy. And I think he will be a guy. I think he's going to be a starter in this league at some point.
I don't think Jack Easterby would like a guy like Minshew. A little bit too risky for him.
Yeah, you're right. It might be. I think that's a good point. But I think Minshew's going to be a starter in this league. I think he's, his play is too good and his numbers are too good. His energy and leadership is off the charts. I mean, he started a lot of games. The only reason he hasn't started more games is because The Jaguars wanted to go Trevor Lawrence and a different route at quarterback, which makes sense, even though they're terrible this year. But I think Minshew's, especially the way he played against the Jets, I think he's on the upswing. I think he's got a number of good years left in him. Moving on to a guy who is out of good years, at least with his former team, that's offensive coordinator Joe Brady of the Carolina Panthers was fired this past weekend. And when I think about the Carolina Panthers and head coach Matt Rule, it kind of reminds me a little bit of when I was playing. And I was a backup. And for 3 years, we had one coaching staff. And for 3 years, I was a backup. And at the end of it, when the coaching staff left, I kind of thought, okay, they didn't know what the heck they were talking about. I'm a good player. New coaching staff's going to come in, and I'm going to get a chance to play and be really, really contribute here. New coaching staff comes in, and lo and behold, they think I'm a backup too. Now, what does that tell you? It's one of those, okay, it's not you, it's me moments. And I think that's what Matt Rule, the head coach of Carolina, is going through right now. He brought in Teddy Bridgewater last year, had a losing season. He brings in Sam Darnold, blames it on Bridgewater, brings in Sam Darnold, reclamation project Sam Darnold. They start losing. Sam Darnold starts playing badly. Okay, well, we're going to go the backup quarterback, the story PJ Walker. Yeah, they really don't work out well offensively. Well, we're going to go look for our ex-girlfriend, Cam Newton, bring him into the fold, and he's going to carry us. Cam Newton plays terribly. All right, and then Matt Rule looks around. Okay, well, the last 4 decisions were wrong, so let's get rid of Joe Brady, the guy calling the plays. So he fires Joe Brady. I think at a certain point, doesn't Matt Rule have to look in the mirror and look at all the guys he's fired and realize, hey, maybe it's not them, maybe it's me?
Could be. It could be. And I think what the Panthers are hoping is that they just don't know yet. You know what I mean? That Matt Rule, maybe he has to fish some stuff out of the system. But it seems like ever since they started going downhill, no decision he has made has really gone his way. So I'd be surprised if the offense didn't suffer a little bit more with the firing of Brady. That's what my estimate is for this season so far. I think it's them firing Brady isn't really going to help or change anything, in my opinion.
Well, and they've already changed so much. They've changed quarterbacks 4 times or 3 times this year, and they brought in a new quarterback. They had Bridgewater last year. I mean, there's already so much volatility and going on. It seems week to week with Carolina. What is firing Brady? And here's the thing that's really crazy. This was Carolina's bye week last week, right? They fired Brady over the bye week, and he's not even playing. Or they're not even playing, so he doesn't even have enough time to get a full game plan. They don't even have a new offensive coordinator for a 2-week game plan over the bye. They got to start over like they played this last weekend. It's just a really, really terrible situation.
Well, there's not much you can do in a terrible situation than move on. And speaking of moving on, there's you want to get into a little bit of our commentary section.
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about a little bit is championship windows for teams. And we were kind of wondering, we've talked about it a little bit this year on our show, is the Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs, how they've kind of disappointed a little bit this season. Now they've been on a hot streak. They're back to 8-4. They're right in the thick of it in the AFC. But, we dug a little research like we always do, and we're kind of like figuring out okay, what is the window for Kansas City? And once I started thinking about that more, and you and I communicated a little bit about this, we dug deep into the salary cap. Now, for those who don't know, the NFL has a salary cap, which puts a maximum amount of money a team can spend on players each year. It also puts a minimum. A team has to spend somewhere between those 2 numbers each year on players. And what that does is it puts a limit onto how many players a team can bring into the fold. So looking through this, the Kansas City Chiefs salary cap situation that they have going on this year, and I looked at all their players, and I found that Patrick Mahomes this year is getting paid $7.5 million. That's pretty good. I mean, it's not Patrick Mahomes level money, but that's where he's at career-wise.
Not too bad.
And then I looked into what he's going to be paid next year, and that's $35 million. For that $35 million, Kansas City this year has Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, their offensive weapon, Travis Kelce, their all-pro Hall of Fame tight end, and their tackle, Orlando Brown, the Pro Bowl tackle, Orlando Brown, that they got from the Baltimore Ravens. For next year, for $35 million, they just get Patrick Mahomes. And that puts so much strain on that team. We already are kind of seeing that the offensive line isn't as good. The receivers are older as they try and pay up more and more for the veteran group that makes up that team. as Mahomes gets his money and that salary cap gets a harder and hit from Mahomes, it's going to be even harder for that team to keep having an easier time in that AFC, especially as that division gets tougher.
Yeah, I agree, and I've always thought this is going to be the case. Eventually, something like this is going to be the downfall of the Kansas City Chiefs. You can't pay someone that's a king's ransom like that. And this is what's the shocker this year has been. Patrick really had to perform over and beyond his contract this year. But it's kind of been lackluster, and you think, okay, maybe they get it. They're back on track now. But you look a little bit more. Sunday Night Football, they played all right, but think about what they're not going to have next year. And I think there's just so much that they can lose, and I wonder if they can bounce back from something like that. It's very worrying if you're a Chiefs fan to know that what you pay for all four of these players next year, all that leaves you with is Mahomes by himself.
Right. And that tells you why everything is win now for Kansas City, why they have to win this year, because next year their talent level is going to drop and the rest of the AFC is just getting better. The Patriots, Herbert and the Chargers, the Ravens are going to be healthier and better. This is it for Kansas City, right? Because next year, like you already said, $35 million goes to that man, Patrick Mahomes. And either Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce take a pay cut, or other guys have to take pay cuts and they leave that team. So they're either going to lose their stars or lose basically all their depth next year. This is make or break season for Patrick Mahomes.
Yes, I agree. But Patrick Mahomes is really good. And his defense has been playing a lot better. But they're not quite one of the best defenses I've ever seen, not even close. But some of this next defenses we're going to talk about are some of the best defenses we have ever seen. This is our top 5 segment. Top 5 NFL defenses of all time. Nick?
Yeah, this is going to be a great segment. Do you mind if I get going? I'm really excited to go through these. I got a great
Absolutely.
list. Absolutely. Yeah, so I'm going to go first. So like you said, this is our top 5 defenses in NFL history. Last week was the offenses. This week, we're keeping it outright defensive. And I'm going to get started with number 5. For me, that's the 1992 Dallas Cowboys. So this Dallas team, this was the first Super Bowl championship team in the 90s where Dallas won 3 out of 4. This was by far the most dominant team in that group. They went 13-3. This defense was the number 1 defense in the NFL. They were laced with talent on both the front 7 with the defensive line and linebackers. Their back end at secondary was very good. They absolutely rolled through teams in the postseason, dominating Philly, beating up San Francisco, and then dropping 52 with multiple defensive touchdowns against the Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl. A great year defensively for Dallas. They're number 5 on my list of top 5 defenses of all time. Number 4 for me is the 1990 New York Giants. This is another Super Bowl team led by Coach Bill Parcells, Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor. But more importantly, this team right here, the 1990s New York Giants, are the reason Bill Belichick exists today. It's the reason we have to put up with the Patriots all the time. Bill Belichick's game plan in upsetting the high-flying Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl in 1990 garnered mass attention and mass popularity. That game plan's in the Hall of Fame today. And because of that game and because of this defense, Belichick ended up rising higher through the coaching ranks, eventually coming to New England, where he's basically whooped on everybody ever since. Number 3 on the top 5 defenses in NFL history is, got to bring it up, another New England Patriot, another Bill Belichick-led defense. This is the 2004 New England Patriots. This was the 3rd Super Bowl in 4 years for the Patriots, went 14-2, gave up 16 points a game, really good defense. But what they probably were most known for was playing the all-time great offense, 2004 Indianapolis Colts, in the playoffs and holding them to just 3 points in one of the more surprising, dominant games in modern NFL history. We haven't seen an offense that great shut down like that probably ever. That's why I have the 2004 New England Patriots on this list at number 3. Number 2 for me is the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This was a defense. They surrendered less than 200 points the entire regular season. That's one of the fewest point totals ever. They're led by Warren Sapp and Simeon Rice at the defensive end. Derek Brooks, great secondary led by Dexter Jackson. This defense scored 9 defensive touchdowns the entire year, an incredible number, including 2 big ones in the fourth quarter against the Oakland Raiders in the Super Bowl to capture the first championship for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers franchise. This is an all-time great defense, the 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then number 1 on my list is the 85 Bears. This was the most dominant defense in NFL history. They had Richard Dent just gearing it up at the front 7, and they had Mike Singletary as the middle linebacker leading the crew. This defense was famous for running the 46, which was a very blitz-happy, super aggressive defense designed to get pressure on quarterbacks, and no one had an answer for it. They demolished great quarterbacks and great offenses all season long, culminating with a Super Bowl win over the Patriots at the end of the season. They set the record for sacks in NFL season. Mike Ditka is a Hall of Fame head coach because of this game. Buddy Ryan, their defensive coordinator, coached a lot of great seasons after this. This is an all-time great team and the most dominant defense I think we've ever seen in the NFL. And then I'm going to go to my underrated list. And when I think of underrated teams and underrated defenses, I got to pick the defense that has the title, the no-name defense. This is the 1972 undefeated Miami Dolphins defense. This was a team that never lost a game. They won every game they played in all season. The only team to do that in the Super Bowl era in NFL history. Yet no one knows half these guys on defense. They were a great team unit led by Don Shula, as the head coach of Miami at that time. They rolled through the playoffs. They didn't give up a single point in the Super Bowl in a win over the Washington Redskins. The only points that Miami gave up was on a special teams touchdown. Very, very dominant defense. They're all about playing team, fundamental football, good tackling, forced turnovers. Don't get a lot of publicity because, again, they're a no-name group, but I put them as the most underrated defense in NFL history.
Good discipline, strong teamwork. Reminds me of Citadel's defense. Just no penalties. Do what you got to do.
So a little fun trivia fact for you. So a linebacker for Miami Dolphins his name was Nick Buoniconti. His son was a linebacker who played at our alma mater, the Citadel.
Was he as good as his dad? I'm assuming no.
No, because he played at the Citadel.
Well, I'm going to get through my top 5 list. That yours is very good, though. I appreciate it, but I disagree with you on number 1, so we'll see who I chose. But my number 5, the 2015 Denver Broncos. This is a defense that it delivered every time it needed to. They won 11 games by 7 points or fewer. And they always were able to make the stop or make a key play. It had tons of players. Chris Harris Jr., Aqib Talib, Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware. A real star-studded cast on defense. And I remember even their safeties. I think Denzel Ward was one of their safeties. They were a very scary defense to play in that Super Bowl run. And they even won the Super Bowl that season. It was the top-ranked defense in the league. Had 7 turnovers in 7 they had 4 offensive touchdowns, 7 turnovers, and 14 sacks in the playoffs. So that's pretty astounding, that in and of itself. My number 4 defense, and I put them low on purpose, possibly, was the 1976 Pittsburgh Steelers. Some would put them, a little bit higher, but I digress. As being a Steelers, they're a little lower for me. This is part of the Steel Curtain defenses of old. You got Mean Joe Green. I have the linebacker on the screen, but his name is currently escaping me, who didn't have any teeth. Jack Lambert. They're just studs, It was a great defense. I mean, they might have had the best string of defensive in NFL history, but it's the Steelers. I mean, who are you kidding? They probably weren't that good, though. I mean, no one's that good. But a defense that was actually very, very good. My number 3 defense is the 2013 Seattle Seahawks. When you think of good defense, when you think of good secondary, who do you think of? You think Seattle. You think Legion of Boom. Famous words. I believe they ran famous Pete Carroll like cover 3-ish system. They had tons of points, tons of yards and turnovers. They completely shut down the Peyton Manning-led Broncos in the Super Bowl. They had key players, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman, and that other safety who doesn't even play in the NFL anymore because he was a character concern for many teams, but we don't really talk about him that much. But it was such a prolific defense. It was actually like really scary. I think they were even scarier than the Denver Broncos at the time. Nobody wanted to play Seattle. My number 2 defense, the 1991 Philadelphia Eagles. Now talk about a unit here. Randall Cunningham as the quarterback of the offense was scary enough. But when you have Jerome Brown, you have Reggie White. Like, these guys were crazy on defense. Like, they could blow through anybody at any time. Tons of sacks. They led the league in passing and rushing yards allowed, the least amount by anyone. Unfortunately, this is the year that Jerome Brown tragically did pass away, but it was a part of the team. It was a great defense, and I think maybe they band together a little bit harder for that. But my number 1 defense of all time, without question, I don't think anyone who's sane at all could possibly argue this. The 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Got guys like Tony Siragusa, you got guys like Ray Lewis. And why I think this defense was so great, because if you think about it, this could possibly be the only defense to win a Super Bowl. Because this was arguably the worst offense of all time to make it to the Super Bowl. You can really name no one. Trent Dilfer's on the offense. I know he's on TV now, but folks, don't let him fool you. He was a terrible quarterback. And this is a point I would like to say. Why do all the terrible quarterbacks get all of the big gigs? You know, got Dan Orlovsky, Trent Dilfer. But 2000 Baltimore Ravens, they literally shut out so many people. They only allowed 9.4 points per game. That's absolutely insane. So 2000 Ravens, my top defense of all time. And my honorable mention, I'm slightly biased. I have again gone back into the Raven well. The 2011 Baltimore Ravens defense. They almost made it to the Super Bowl this year, but led by Ray Lewis, Terrell Suggs, Ed Reed, so many Haloti Ngata, all kinds of players all around the ball. Tons of playmakers, tons of really big names on this defense. And they were just the time when Baltimore's defense was scary. You step on the field and you see Ray Lewis, 52, Ed Reed, 20 back there. You got to know where they are at all times. So that's my list.
Yeah, good on you for. I knew you were going to put at least 2 Baltimore teams up there, but good on you for at least including the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was wondering if you were going to even mention a Steelers or a Browns defense, and you did. So credit to you, Miles. That's good job, good professionalism.
I'm feeling charitable this Christmas, so
it is the giving season. You're right.
But I did have to nod. They beat us. Might as well put them on the list. I mean, they weren't that bad of a defense. I can at least put them in my number 4 slot.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, not that bad. 4 Super Bowls, but yeah, that's a 2 good lists there, and I think that's our show. I think we've covered everything we wanted to talk about. A big weekend in football that just passed. A lot of top stories around. Again, thanks for all of our listeners. We really appreciate you guys. If you like what you hear and you really get involved in what you see and view on the show, whether you're watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please subscribe, please like, please comment. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us what you like. We're all about making a better show for you guys. Like we always talk about, we're not big sports media. We don't have the big budgets, the fancy suits, the talking heads, or any of that stuff. We got to make up for it. We got to work hard. We got to do our research. And we always joke about, we got to be ridiculously good looking. So as always, I'm Nick Rudman. That's Andrew Mize. This is our show. Mize, any final thoughts?
That's all I got. Happy holidays to everybody out there. Great week of football ahead of us. We're getting close to the end of the season, seeing how teams really start to shape up in this end stretch. Some of the most exciting times. This is when teams really need to shine. That's all I got, and we will see everybody next.
I got racks in my sack, hurt my back, yeah. They said, say Nick, what you got up in that bag, yeah. I got racks.